final proposal for the crisp veggie with our team, me, Rob Newton, Justin Rist, and Scott Roycraft. Quick overview of what we're going to be doing and talking about, and bringing it home with potential earnings at the end. So TCV's objectives are to provide 7 produce products all year long to the Chicago metro area at a service 10% of the targeted region of households, and 90% of the Amazon Fresh prices with a 95% fill rate. Additionally, we want to get all of that produce to our customers with no less than 40% shelf life remaining. For our DC location, we looked at a couple different places nearby transportation hubs. And then we compared them as far as the market density nearby. So you can see the 5 selections there. The big one that came out on top was the international produce market with the densest population nearby. Once you started getting further outside, like the integrated industries and Centerpoint intermodal yards, you're so far downstate that your population density no longer makes it super feasible to distribute locally. Additionally, we looked at affordability and access for our distribution center. Prices per square foot, whether it was out at O'Hare or at the International Produce Market, were pretty comparable. So that was not really a factor in our calculus. But the access is readily available there at the International Produce Market, being really close to I-55, the Stevenson Expressway, as well as providing that access to the International Produce Market that we'd be able to leverage in contingencies. Additionally, you can see not only are there other intermodal yards nearby this particular cold storage facility, frozen assets, but also Amazon has a delivery station. The service region, when we started to figure out what radius we wanted to distribute it to, we looked at some of that population density we said, and we went out to that 12 miles. And so what you can see is when you look at how population changes as you move out away from the produce market, there are several maximums and where we snapped the chalk line was right there at the 12-mile mark before you start having a little bit more of a drop off for population density. And this holds true for household as well. So that allowed us to sit for a 12-mile radius from the International Produce Market that put us at 87 zip codes in Cook County with a population of 3.3 million, 1.4 million households, and 33 of Chicago's 50 highest population zip codes. So we're hitting 2/3 of the potential market there. As far as how that population and the 10% assumption that we make for the upper level of our market factored into the demand estimates that we make, you can see using the USDA consumption numbers how our annual target demand will look for each of the produce products. As far as prices go over the course of the year, you can see there is some variability for prices based on the USDA's numbers for received by growers. But what we still were able to do is annualize those prices using the USDA numbers, and you can see the prices per pound there versus the sale prices that we're going to be able to turn. Over to Justin.
All right, I'll take over from here. Thanks, Rob. So now here is shown our network design for shipping the produce to our distribution center. As you can see, we're receiving produce from California, Mexico, and Florida, and we will ship all of these via full truck loads to our distribution center. The produce we ship from Mexico will be shipped through Laredo, Texas, and we will pick it up there on our trucks and bring it the rest of the way to our distribution center. Now you can see the shelf life of each of the products that we will be selling. The shelf life was really a large determining factor in how we were planning on shipping them to our distribution center. We decided that we wanted all of the produce to be in our distribution center with at least 70% of its shelf life remaining. This would allow us to meet the constraint of having it to the customer with 40% of the shelf life left as required in the problem statement. And we determined our optimal order quantity based upon the amount of time that we could successfully store the produce in the distribution center from that 70% to that 40% shelf life. And then based off that optimal order quantity, you can see on the rightmost column, that is how many trucks it will take to ship each one of the produce to our distribution center per order. Okay, so now into our reorder policy for that optimal order quantity. As you can see, that second column there is the same optimal order quantity, and we calculated the reorder point for each one of these items based off a 50% service level. This would mean that we would have zero safety stock in our distribution center, and essentially our reorder point would be the average demand that we expect over the lead time. That explains why there's two different values for the lead time, as lead time varies depending on the location we are receiving the produce from. And then, as you can see, based off our EOQ, we determined the orders per year. And because we had a 50% service level, this would mean that 50% of the orders per year would lead to stockouts on average. And so that column in the right chart shows how many stockouts we'll have per year. Obviously, if we have this many stockouts per year, we won't be able to obtain the required 95% fill rate. So to fix this problem, we plan on leveraging the international produce market that we're located right next to purchase vegetables day of if we know that a truck will not be arriving in time, and we will stock out of that product. And the amount that we will purchase day of from the international produce market will be equal to the amount of safety stock that we would have if we had a 95% service level policy on our reorder point. So the values in the rightmost column are how much we would purchase from the international produce market. And this would effectively allow us to have an overall 95% service rate, which would lead to at least a 95% fill rate, satisfying that constraint. Now into our customer order policy. So we assumed that customer demand would follow a Poisson distribution. So each individual customer would their number of orders they would have would be exponentially distributed. And we assumed that they would reorder on average every 4.375 days. And this is information that we collected from the USDA. We truncated this exponential distribution that we modeled each customer's demand from 1 to 10 days. We assumed that each customer would not reorder multiple times a day. And we also assumed that they wouldn't reorder more than once every 10 days due to the short shelf life of the produce that they're ordering. We ran this through a Monte Carlo simulation, and you can see this right curve there is the average, are the expected number of customer orders we would receive from each customer. And now I will turn it over to Scott to finish out the presentation.
Thanks, Justin. So on our environmental impact, a couple things to note here. We started by looking at cardboard as a delivery method for the customers and switched pretty quickly over to what you see here, these plastic totes. If we order about 2.2 based on our customers' delivery expectations, we can satisfy all the demand for our customers without having to throw out any cardboard. And it's still a overall savings of $3.5 million. The other thing I'll draw your attention to here is that there are readily available companies to supply bins so that we can do composting on what little spoilage we might have. So those are both great environmental impacts for a startup company to engage in and help with the environment. Next slide, you see we have taken a stab at what the pick area will look like. If you can imagine essentially 6 of these sets of packing areas side by side. The empty cartons starting on the left with a pickless printer, and the operators working in a bucket brigade fashion to deliver to the van at the end. And we have to turn these van overs 3 to 4 per hour in order to meet our customer requirements. And that's what we have shown with 12 pick areas. The next slide shows the delivery area and the sweep heuristic in action. We have a fleet of cargo vans estimated off of the Monte Carlo simulation that Justin referenced. Average distance into each of the zip code areas is 13.5 miles. The time for each route is 4 hours. And so we have to platoon these and send them out in waves, 3 waves throughout the day, with about a 4-hour delivery window for this fleet of vans to effectively deliver within our 20-hour promise time. This slide, three big takeaways here. Obviously, expenses is less than revenue, so about 49 million in revenue, 38 million in expenses, leaving about 11 million for profit. And you see the expenses are pretty detailed here. We've looked all the way down to wages, the warehouse costs, cartons, those types of things in order to make sure that the business would be profitable. And so in our final slide, talk about conclusions. We have 11.06 million in gross profit potential, which is pretty good for startup company. We have a feasible logistics network. Obviously, we're close in proximity to the produce market, which gives us synergistic opportunities. We have located close to a population dense area with warehouse availability and storage that's affordable for our DC. Also, recommendations, of course, being near the international produce market is important. Delivering via full truckload is important for our cost standpoint. The zero stock safety, the zero safety stock with reduced spoilage and inventory was critical for us. And again, it plays off of the synergy we're getting by being near the international produce market. And our recommendation, of course, to continue to look for opportunities to expand in markets and decrease the margin of our operation based off of some of the things that we've already mentioned. And I'll take any questions if we were live.